Hello world, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be building a custom cursor interaction that is masking something in the background as well as a custom click interaction, okay? Now I'm going to go through this website that I have pulled up here, and I'm just going to show you guys what the interaction looks like, okay? So first of all, we don't have a cursor on the page as you see, the white sort of cursor. We instead have this big round dot, okay? And as we move the round dot around, you can see that it's sort of revealing parts of an image or something that looks like an image, right? So when we scroll down, we see the bottoms of the feet of this character, and then as we scroll up, we see the shield and the hands and then the face, okay? So this is Captain America. Now, as I scroll to the right, I see Thor, another Marvel superhero. So that's this circle acts as a sort of mask for all these superheroes in the background. We also have Iron Man here to the left. Now, this cursor, when you click on any of these superheroes, so for example, if I click on Iron Man, you can see that it switches to a different picture of Iron Man that expands and takes up the entire size of the screen, okay? So the cursor expands in size to take up the width of the entire screen, okay? Now, we also, our cursor turns into this X, this cross that you see right here, so that if we want to exit out of this big image and return to our original one with the cursor masking, then all we have to do is just hit the X or just click, right? And then this image sort of goes down and we are returned to this sort of mask that we have, okay? So now if I click on Thor, we get the same effect, but now with a picture of Thor. And again, we get that X, and if I just click on it, it goes away. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing with Captain America. Again, different picture of him, and then we also have the X. So this is what we're going to be building today. So let me just switch over to the Webflow tab and get started. So, if you guys have watched any of my previous videos on custom cursor interactions, you'll notice that the structure is sort of similar in terms of the original settings, but I'm just going to go ahead and explain, okay? So, what we're going to have is we're going to have a main, okay? A div called main, and this main div is essentially going to be just something that has a width and height of 100%, so it takes up the entire sort of screen width, and it just has a background color of black. So that's what the main div is going to serve as. So let me just drag that in, and I'm going to call this main. Now this is going to have a width of 100% and a height of 100 VH, okay? Now, like I mentioned before, I'm just going to change the background color to be black, like that. Okay, now inside of this main, we are going to create our actual cursor, okay? And this cursor is going to exist, actually, sorry about that, I should have said it's going to be outside of the main, that's what I meant to say. And this is going to be called the cursor wrapper, okay? So our cursor wrapper is going to basically be put on top of the page, okay? So let me explain. This is going to have pretty much the same style, so 100% and 100 VH. But we're going to set it to have a position of fixed, and it's going to be, make sure that we click this first sort of preset right here that says top left, okay? So now what this ensures is that the cursor wrapper is always going to be on top of everything else in the page, okay? So then that's exactly what we need. So to sort of even make that even more clear, I'm just going to give it a really high Z index of, let's say, 100, okay? Now, I also want to set the cursor wrapper to be flex and vertical, just like that, and center aligned. Now, inside of here, we're going to create our cursor, okay? So our cursor is going to be inside of here, and this is just going to have a simple name of cursor. And this cursor is going to have a set width and height, so let's say 20 EM, and the same for the height, because again, we want to create a circle, right? So it's going to have 20 EM of width and height. And then it's going to have a border radius of 50% so that it's fully rounded. Now we can't see that it's fully rounded only because we don't have anything inside, but if I was to give it a background color of white, you can see now that it is fully rounded. Let me just take that background color off, okay? Now I also want to give this a position of absolute, okay? And a Z index of, let's say, 2, okay? Now, the first thing that we're going to create inside of our cursor is this sort of lineup that we have with all the superheroes, okay? So we have Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor. So we're going to create a lineup with all three of these superheroes. So we're going to position them next to each other. So for that, I'm going to drag another div into here, and I'm going to call this superhero lineup, okay? So this div is also going to be pretty simple. It's going to have a width of 100 VW and a height of 100 VH. Now, as you can see, because things are centered, it's being positioned out to side, but we'll fix that in a second. Now, we also want to make sure to set this to flex. Now, it is going to be horizontal because, again, remember, our three superheroes are positioned horizontally, and there's a space between and around them, right? So we're going to make sure to hit space around. And then I'm just going to hit position absolute, like that. Okay, so now that this is set to position absolute, I'm just going to go back to my cursor here and make sure that this is set to flex vertical, like that. And now, as you can see, our superhero lineup is taking up the entirety of this sort of page that we see here. Okay, so our superhero lineup obviously has to contain our superheroes. So first, I'm going to drag in Iron Man, and I'm going to put him in here, and I'm going to give him a class of superhero. Okay, so this superhero class is pretty simple. It's just going to have a height of 70% because we don't want it to be too big, and that's about it. Now I'm just going to duplicate this a couple of times. Oh, not like that, 70%, and just grab the superhero itself, and now I'm just going to replace the images to give us what we need. Okay, so that's going to be Captain America. And now I'm just going to put in Thor. Okay, perfect. So that's it for our superhero lineup, okay? Now, before we move on to creating that click interaction, let's just go ahead and make sure that we can create this sort of mask for our cursor, okay? So I am just going to actually go into the body, and I'm going to add a page trigger for mouse move in Viewport, okay? So this is going to be called cursor move, and we're just going to define what we want to happen to create the cursor move, okay? So I'm going to grab the cursor itself and make sure that it's selecting the class, and I want to move it -50 VW, like that, and we also want to move it 50 VW, like that, okay? That's going to be our cursor. Now, let's do the same thing for the mouse Y. Instead, let's make it -50 VH and 50 VH. Okay, so now if we select it, okay, so the cursor is moving, right? But we also need the superheroes to move as sort of how we need them to move. We don't want them to move, we want them to stay sort of fixed, right? So for that, we're going to go to our cursor, and we're going to make sure that we have overflow hidden set, okay? So this starts off our mask thing, but now if we hit preview, you can see that the whole entire superhero lineup is moving with us, and we don't want that. So we're going to go back to our page triggers, and I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to grab the superhero lineup, set a move on this one as well, make sure it's selecting the class, and while the cursor is moving -50 VW, we want the superhero lineup to move 50 VW. So it's moving in the, 50 VW. So it's moving in the opposite direction. So now I'm just going to add this a couple of times to our other classes. So -50 VW. So now if we try it for just our X, you can see that it's working, right? Now we're going to do the same thing for our Y. We're just going to move it 50 VH when the cursor is moving -50. So now if I just check that out, now if we hit preview, you can see, there we go, we have our mask. Now I'm going to hit save, and if we go in here, perfect, we have our mask, okay? So that's the first part. And the next part is to create this click interaction, okay? So let's go ahead and make this. The click images are also going to be housed inside of our cursor, right? Because these are images that have to take up the cursor at some point. So I'm going to drag, this is going to be another div, okay? And this is going to be called cursor image, okay? It's kind of like the background image, you could call it, okay? So this cursor image is just going to have a width of 100 VW and a height of 100 VH, okay? And we're going to make sure that it's set to position absolute, like that. And now we want to give it the background image that's going to serve as, let's say, for Iron Man. Okay, so let's go ahead and pick Iron Man's image, and we're going to hit cover and make sure that it's centered. Okay, and no repeat. Perfect. Okay, now we can't see the entire image, so because we're only seeing it when we click, right? So for right now, let's just set that to be display none. Okay. But now we have to create different images for each of these sort of superheroes, right? So I'm going to click back on the display none. And I'm just going to get rid of this image on this one in particular. And then I'll set it back to display none. And I'm going to give this cursor image a combo class of 1. So this is for Iron Man. Now here, I'm going to add that image because this is, again, specific to the Iron Man. Perfect. Now I'm just going to duplicate this 2 times. I'm going to remove the class. And I'll make one for Captain America now, just again, replacing that image. So hitting cover like that. And then let's do the final thing for Thor. So if I just add this here for Thor, and I hit cover and just like that, perfect. Okay, so now that we have those images set up, it's important to create also the cross that's going to come up when we click, okay? So when I click, you can see that that cross comes up, so let's go ahead and make that as well. This is just going to be an image, so I'm just going to drag the image itself in, and this is going to be called cursor cross, okay? This is going to have a width of 3 EM, okay? And it's going to be set to a position of absolute and have a really high Z index because we always want this to be visible, okay? And then I'm just going to set it to be display none because it's not default visible, right? It only becomes visible when we click. Okay, so that's it for our structure. Now we need to get started with creating the actual animations that are going to link, sort of create that click that we need. So for that, what I'm going to do is just grab our first superhero that you see over here, and we're going to go into the element trigger, and I'm going to make one for click, and I'm going to start an animation called superhero click. Now the first thing that we want to happen whenever we click on any superhero is that we want the cursor to increase its size, right? Because as we click, you can see that the cursor expands dramatically, right? So for that, I'm just going to grab the cursor itself, and I'm going to set the size to go up to, let's say, from 20 EM to 500 EM. Okay, just like that. So now if we hit preview, okay, so that happens really quickly, so let's maybe give it a duration of 2 seconds. Okay, so I'm actually going to add another size here, and this is going to be 20 EM by 20 EM, so this is the initial state. Now if we check it, there we go. So we're going to add this initial state, and then we're going to add our 500 EM, okay? Now, what we also want to happen whenever we click on any superheroes is we want the cursor cross to be visible, right? Because that's when it starts to show. So I'm going to show that, so show that like that. And then we also want this superhero lineup to disappear. Because remember, when we click on any of these superheroes, right, the superhero lineup itself disappears, and instead we see this image, right? So to create that, first, let me just go ahead and grab the superhero lineup and make sure that this is set to display none, okay? Okay, so that's it for the superhero click. Now this is very generic, it applies for all the superheroes, so let's just go ahead and add it for all of them. So mouse click, and I'm just gonna start the superhero click for all of them, okay? Perfect. Now, the next thing that we need to change is the sort of image that shows up, right? Now, the image that shows up can't be the same for all of them, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create separate ones for each of them. So we're going to go back to our first superhero, Iron Man. I'm going to create another click trigger right here, and this is going to be called Superhero Iron Man click, okay? Now, in this case, all we're doing is we're just grabbing the first cursor image, right, which is going to be Iron Man's, and we're just setting this to be shown, okay? Now, what we also want to do is sort of increase the opacity, okay? That's because we're going to change a couple settings in the future where we're going to lower the opacity when we sort of exit out, okay? So we're just going to make sure that the opacity is set to 100, Okay, so now I'm just going to save. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and apply this to all of them. So I'm going to go to the second one, which is Captain America, and I'll create another interaction. And I'm going to call this superhero Captain America click. Okay, so for this, just select the second image now, and I'm just going to show it again. And also make sure that the opacity is up to 100. Okay, now finally we're going to do this for Thor, so I'm just going to make that another interaction like that, and this is going to be called superhero Thor click. Okay, so in this case we're just grabbing the last image, making sure it's set to shown, and also increase the opacity. Okay, perfect. Now if we go into our preview mode and we click on any of them, okay, so our image is appearing. Now it's not taking up the full sort of screen size, and we can still sort of see it moving around, but we're going to fix that, okay? And because it's sort of moving with the cursor, if you can see that like that, but we're going to fix that. Now I'm going to close it. Nothing is happening, right? Because we haven't set up the close interaction. So we have a couple things to work on. So let's go ahead and just fix those, okay? Okay. So for this, I'm going to go to my cursor cross, right? Because as you can see, this only appears whenever we click on a superhero, right? So for that, we're just going to set up a click animation on the cursor cross itself. And this is going to be called cursor cross click, okay? And a couple of things are going to happen here, okay? So the first thing that's going to happen is that the cursor will sort of decrease its size again, right? So if I click on Iron Man here, now we have everything ready, right? But now if I click on the cursor cross, okay, so the size of the image goes down, and then we're switched back to the superhero lineup, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So first thing I'm going to do is grab the cursor, and I'm going to set the size to go back down to 20 EM by 20 EM, okay? Now that's going to take 2 seconds, okay? Now we also want the opacity of the image that we have here to go down. So let's go ahead and make that down. And then we want to hide the said image, right? So let's go ahead and hide the image. Oh, okay, so when you're doing these, make sure that it's set to cursor image, and it says all elements with this class, okay? Because we want to select any cursor image, right? We don't just want Iron Man's to disappear when we click on the cursor. We want all of them, right? Regardless of which superhero you're clicking on, okay? So that's that. Now we finally want to show the superhero lineup again, because remember that was set to display none. And then we're just going to hide the cursor cross itself, okay? Just going to place that at the end like that. So now if we hit save and we try, okay, so our image, it's still moving, but we're going to fix that. And then when I click on it, it goes away. Okay, so a couple of things went wrong there. I'm going to click on Captain America just so that we can show that again. Okay, so we have Captain America here, right? Now if I hit the cross button again, you can see that it goes down, but it doesn't switch the image. So we have, okay, a few problems. Let's go ahead and fix these. I'm going to click on Captain America again, or Iron Man. Now, when I click the cross, you can see that it sort of instantly switches to the superhero lineup before anything else is even done, right? So let's go ahead and make sure that we fix that. For all we need to do is just add a delay to the rest of these. So I'm going to add, grab these using Shift and just add a delay of 2 seconds, just so that the cursor can reduce its size first, like that, and then the rest will happen, okay? So now if we check this out, okay, now if I click on it again, okay, perfect, there, now that's working. If I try Captain America now, this should also work, hopefully. Okay, so that's not working, I wonder why. Let's see. Okay, so it's because, as you can see here, the cursor, the only class that's being selected is the cursor image 1, so that's only Iron Man's, right? So we want to make sure that it's selecting all the cursor image and not just the one with the combo class of 1. So now if we hit save, now it should hopefully work. Let's see, let's close this out. Okay, that's working, perfect. Now let's try Thor just to check. Okay, now if I click away, perfect. Okay, so they're all working. Now the one thing that we have left is to just fix the fact that the cursor image is moving around with the cursor itself, okay? So for that, what we're going to do is grab the body again, and we're going to go back to our page triggers, and I'm going to grab any of the cursor images, okay? And we're going to move them, okay? Just like we did the superhero lineup, okay? So I'm going to move it 50 VW, like that, and I'm going to move it negative 50 VW. So it's doing, again, like the superhero lineup is doing opposite of what the cursor is doing. So this is going to be 50 VH and negative 50 VH. Okay. Now the one thing that we need to fix, again, is to make sure that it's selecting cursor image and not just cursor image 1. So now if we hit save, and now if we try it, hopefully it should work. Perfect, so it's not moving, right? And then we have our cursor that is moving, and then now if I click on the cursor, it goes away and we return to the mask. Okay, perfect. Let me just try Thor just for checking, and perfect. Okay, so that's it for this interaction. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Like, comment, subscribe, and that's it. Bye!